Hello, hello, hello. We are going to be getting ourselves into the Path of Exile 0.2.0 patch notes. This is just the live stream. Uh, I'm going to get through the most relevant parts that I see, or get through all of them, depending on how much time I want to spend on this. And then I'll be recording it so that I can upload the relevant parts to YouTube later. So yeah. This is just the table of contents I can see. There's a lot of stuff to this for sure. I've zoomed in so that people can read it with me if they want to. Hopefully it's not too terrible quality so that can happen. It's late because I just got off work and this is the first time I've had the chance to do this. So because they weren't out earlier before I went to work, and they obviously came out in the middle of me being at work. So anyway, Dawn of the Hunt League, start with a new fresh economy, blah, 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 blah. That stuff is pretty self-evident. Basically, it's just saying that you can play. They started a fresh economy in the Dawn of the Hunt League, but all your old characters are still there and able to be accessed. They just give you a free passive change along with free passive refund because of the passive tree changes, and they highly encourage you to play on the new league because league starts are fun, and kind of honestly, they said honestly that it invalidates your balance change like notes that you may have because your experience will be skewed by having all the items that you would have on standard now. So if you want to get like a pure experience of what all the new changes are going to give you, you're going to want to start fresh. New playable class, the Huntress. Amazon and Ritualist. Yep. 25 new skills. This is just all what they basically went over in the live stream. Reliquary key, in-game changes. Yep. I'm not gonna go through all this stuff. This is just rehashing all the stuff that they went over before. They do seem to add some of the Untainted Paradise. Nice. That's awesome. Do they go over the unique tablets in this? They usually don't go over each unique in the patch notes, as to not spoil things. The tablet modifier that causes ritual favors in your maps to have 5 to 10% increased chance to be omens now has a value of 15 to 25%. Makes sense. They were buffing that, so cool. It just means that omens are actually going to be usable, like for the most part. They're not going to be astronomically expensive. They should be an active part of the economy where even mid-range players should be able to have a decent amount of them to not have to hoard them or feel like they can't use them because they are so precious. The only items you can use them on is mirror tier, and when that case happens, nobody's going to use them because there's a handful of people in the entire league that ever even have mirror tier items. Tablet modifiers that provide increased pack size in your maps now has values of 3 to 7. Previously it was 3 to 8, so they slightly nerfed it by 1%. Don't really understand that, but alright. The tablet modifier for rare monsters having an additional modifier can no longer roll. Okay. There's actually some good stuff in these, so I might go over these. In-game changes. Area corruption on the Atlas now have a central corrupted nexus that is the source of the affliction, and the areas leading up to the nexus corruption will spill out from the slain enemies and amalgamate into powerful monsters. We knew that. Upon reaching nexus, you will begin the task of cleansing. Yep, we knew that. A boss for each faction has been added. They appear in the corrupted nexus. That's fine. We knew that too. And additional corrupted monster factions have also been introduced. Corrupted monsters have their visuals and animations improved, and their skills have been rebalanced. Okay, that's cool. Probably going to kill us more, maybe, I don't know. Corrupted areas no longer implicitly have +1 to area level, but now are much more likely to have modifiers, and the modifiers can be more powerful. Some new corrupted modifiers have also been added. Cool, make it more interesting than just +1, that's nice. Cleansing a Nexus will cause surrounding maps to become cleansed, which have their own set of monsters and rewards, including a newly introduced fracturing orbs. We knew this. Yep. Fracturing orb fractures a random modifier on a rare item with at least 4 modifiers, locking it in place. Yep, that seems pretty close to what it does in PoE 1. You can now respawn and return to a map if you die upon first entering the... Okay, yep, we knew that. The portal changes. In portals, everyone gets to respawn that number of times. That's amazing right there. That honestly should even be in PoE 1 in my opinion. That portal change for parties, though they probably won't do that. You'll be able to enter and exit your maps as much as you like, as long as you haven't died. The number of portals is representative of the number of revives you have during the map. In my opinion, that's much better. I know some people have differing opinions. There may be a better way, but so far this is the best way they've figured out of doing what they want to do, because I don't just want 6 portals. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think they were right in trying to make it to where boss fights matter, and you can't just slam your head against a brick wall until it breaks. You know, that's what you can do in PoE 1. Yeah, and people use the 6 portal defense. They literally use 6 portals as a defense in PoE 1, and that's not a good thing. That's not what the 6 portals are there for. You're not supposed to think of them as an extra layer of defense to get your boss down. They're meant... So bosses should die in one go, in my opinion. That means that you need actual skill to do it. You can't just gear yourself to the point where you're able to kill the thing in 6 tries. That's just my opinion on things, though. Once you start a boss fight, the remaining system will change to require the map owner to collectively respawn the entire party. Okay, yeah, we saw that. If you decide to rush the map boss without interacting with any other map content and then die, you will respawn at the boss checkpoint and only the map boss will be present. All other monsters and content will be removed. This is to prevent cases where players will be able to farm multiple copies of the same rewards by dying on purpose. Fair enough. The number of towers on the Atlas have been reduced drastically, but each one is now more powerful. Awesome. Hopefully this means that people actually enjoy the towers. I never really thought the towers were horrible. I think their most egregious sin was just that they were boring and they were too frequent. And this kind of solves both. They've already majorly solved the boring part of it, and they've done a lot more even in that case for this patch. So hopefully them just being in reduced number and them being more powerful in that case means that you're excited to find a tower. You're excited to run it. It may end up being one of the best maps you have around. Like, those towers are what you want to go for because those are going to be the absolute best things, the funnest maps to run. And if that's the case, that's awesome. I still think they could do away with the idea that each node in the waypoint on the waypoints on the actual Atlas map, in my opinion, are attached to the layout of the map. I wish they would detach that somehow. I think that's like the major issue. One of my major issues with this whole endgame is the fact that the layouts are tied to the actual nodes on the map itself and not to the waypoints or the waystones or whatever. Because I think one of the greatest things that you can do in PoE 1 that you can't in PoE 2 is if you like one layout, you can just run that one layout. As soon as you've progressed to the point where you've completed all the maps and you're at the point where you're just farming at that point, you can choose whatever map you want or choose which one fits your playstyle more or your strategy that you're doing more. But anyway, yeah, I think that decoupling the layout of the map from the actual point that you run would be better, in my opinion. Where you can choose to run just one layout and one layout only if you want to. Or just make that a thing somehow. I don't know. Maybe make an item that allows you to transform a node from a layout to another layout. Like a Orb of Horizons, but in this game. You know, like the Orb of Horizons would make it to where the layout that you don't want to run is now a different layout of the same, maybe the same biome or whatever. I don't know how they would work that, but that seems like a pretty cool compromise, because I think one of the major issues is that there's just so many maps in PoE 2 layouts that just aren't as fun as they would have been in PoE 1. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of PoE 1 maps that aren't fun. There just is, and so many people don't seem to remember that. But like, it's not as big a problem in PoE 1 because you can choose not to run them. Like you only have to do them once to get the completion, and then once you're done, you're done. The cells map, it comes to mind, dungeons, any of those ones that have a crapload of walls in them and a crapload of different little corridors and ways to go, those are terrible. Everybody hates them, but because you only have to do it once, you're only forced to do it once. Nobody complains about it. If they made that change in PoE 2, nobody would complain about map layouts being bad. It's because you're forced to do map layouts that you don't want to do in this game more than once. Anyway, tablets, except Overseer tablets, inherently add twice as many mechanics to towers. We saw that. Tower maps now spawn with extra content, including bosses. Yep. I'm going to skip a few because I think killing rare monsters required is no longer... Killing rare monsters required for map completion no longer has a chance to grant monster modifiers to the remaining rare monsters. I didn't even know that was a thing. Increased chances for rare monsters to have 3 or 4 mods in maps. Note this means that they drop more items. This mostly to compensate for the removal of rare monsters, granting modifiers to other rare monsters on death. A checkpoint now spawns when the last available optional content in a map has been completed. That's pretty cool. Extra content such as Breach, Delirium, Expedition, and Ritual now start spawning further away from the Ziggurat Refuge. Okay. How waypoints are obtained in maps has been redesigned. Our intention is to both make sustaining waystone drops much more reliable and much less dependent on random elements. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough, we knew this. We knew this. Doriani now has up to 10 waystones available to purchase, either at tier 1 or one tier below the highest completed tier. Okay, that's cool. That's good, because he only sold like a few, and eventually he just became useless. Overseer tablets now cause 2 to 4 maps in range to contain bosses, previously 37. Okay, fair enough. Because there probably is just going to be more bosses overall, so there's not a real need to have the tablet put as many in the area. Identified waystones now provide 30% increased waystone drop chance instead of increased quantity. Okay, so that's where the 10 extra points come from, is completing each unique map. Recombination. Yep, that's fine. Kind of read about that in the live stream. Tablet monsters. Tablet. All bosses have been all bosses that have been affected by difficulty in Simulacrum can now drop their specific uniques at any difficulty. However, rare uniques are even rarer at lower difficulties. Yeah, we saw that. Pinnacle boss content is roughly half the amount to unlock. Yep, that makes sense. Okay. Atlas passive tree changes. Added support for Asmerian spirits and rogue exiles to the Atlas passive tree. Okay, cool. Those guys are going to be crazy. I can guarantee you there's going to be a lot of people that complain about them being way too strong. Guaranteed going to happen. Reddit is going to be on fire, just like it always is. Nothing new, but anyway, that's going to happen. People are going to complain that those guys are way too strong and they're going to need to be nerfed. 100%. Mark my words. If it does not happen, I will be astounded. Added more notable passives and reworked some existing ones. to make the available choices more interesting. That's good. They were actually not that great, so I'm glad to see that. Deadly Evolution Atlas Keystone has been replaced by a new keystone called Ecological Shift, which causes your maps to now have a 40% more chance to contain random extra content and 20% less number of monster packs in your maps. Okay, so if you just want to run extra content, if you just really want to focus on rituals, expeditions, delirium, and breach and stuff like that, you can just make it to where your monsters have less pack size in it, which kind of sucks in a way, but also you're adding a lot more pack size with the content. So I don't know, kind of balances out, or it should. So maybe that's a good note to take for if you just want to take on a lot more random content. Yep, Crumbling Walls Atlas notable passive now has a 10% chance for an additional breach, what previously 15%, 3% chance for 3 additional breaches. Okay, so they nerfed it, and 1% chance for 10 additional breaches. Yeah, so they just overall nerfed it. Okay. Extreme Archaeology notable passive. Atlas passive no longer causes monsters to spawn with. Oh, come on, that's sad. That was cool. I mean, it's not gonna be a big deal in my opinion, but that is sad. The Frantic Invasion quantity of breach splinters dropped by monsters. Okay, so they nerfed basically everything about breach, which makes a whole lot of sense. But they buffed. Again, they buffed omens dropping, which is good. So I think ritual is going to be the content to run. Maybe, maybe not, but ritual is going to be probably pretty in favor of this patch. General improvements in order to work around a common crash. Oh yeah, I saw this earlier on my phone. That I saw a couple things. There's a crash that they fixed. So that's cool. Reforging benches in towns now have been repositioned to more optimal locations. The stash and the guild stash also have been slightly spaced apart to reduce misclicking. Okay, strong boxes now appear in certain Act 1 areas. Added a stash to the treasure room in the Trial of Chaos. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Oh my goodness. This was amazing. This is needed. Anyway, many fire skills now have visually burned grass in areas. Okay, that's crazy that wasn't in to begin with. Improved performance on summoning and reviving minions. Further improved safety checks preventing using movement skills to skip the elevators in the Trial of Chaos encounters and prevent the encounters from functioning correctly. I didn't even know that was a thing. The jumps performed when using Escape Shot and Toxic Growth now allow you to jump over enemies at small amounts of terrain. Vaulting Impact also received this change at a later date. Okay. Decay debuff from the Decaying Hex support now uses a more appropriate visual effect and displays below the enemy's life bar. Okay. Grenade skills now have a small amount of random variation in the travel distance when firing multiple grenades at once. Interesting. That may or may not affect us. I mean, I'm sure I'll probably attempt to use some grenade skills. That's what I was using in the first build, so... But I kind of felt like my build was more of a grenade build and less of a artillery ballista build in the first place, so maybe we... And I wasn't even really going into grenades, and they were that strong. So I'm hoping they nerfed grenades enough and buffed everything else around crossbows where you don't feel the need to use grenades, because grenades were basically the best thing on the crossbow. So it's just what felt best, other than if you were using that galvanic shot, which even then it was okay, but it definitely wasn't top meta. Firebolt now uses the same animation as freezing shards instead of generic projectile spell animations. Updated 3D art of stash. And interesting. Player changes. Characters are now required to be at least level 25 when entering the cool difficulty areas and 50 to enter in-game areas. Okay. I guess there was people that were getting into the in-game way sooner than that. I'm not entirely sure why they would add that, but whatever. It's not really going to affect anything. The player base... Sorry, I don't mean to be gross. The player base's attack speed for unarmed attacks is now 1.4 instead of 1.2. And they slightly nerfed a lot of the monk stuff to compensate Cool. Freeze now builds up roughly 48% slower on enemies. Just a direct nerf to freeze because it was way too powerful. Player base ailment threshold now half of maximum life. Previously all of maximum life. Okay, so that does make the tactician's node there pretty good, in my opinion. If you stack enough evasion, you can get all your threshold back plus a lot more. That basically makes you not necessarily immune to threshold to ailments, but you'll be effectively immune against anything other than like major bosses. Presence base radius now 4 meters, was previously 6 meters. Oh, that kind of sucks. Okay, monster modifiers stolen from rare monsters, such as through behead support, have had their effect. They provide to players adjusted to be more appropriate. Okay. Cruel monsters of candle mass essence now provide 5% increased life. Okay. The worn sandals trial of the Sekima's affliction now grants 30% left movement speed if you've been hit by an enemy. So it's you get reduced way more speed, but it's not just blanket. Because reduced is the opposite of increased, whereas less is the opposite of more. And just like in PoE 1, if it's less, then that means you're getting hit way harder. So if you get hit with this, you're a snail. But the trade-off there is if you're not getting hit, you're moving at normal speed. So I guess that's okay, but I mean, again, it's more fuck melee, I guess. If you're not an evasion melee build, fuck melee with that. So you're just never gonna take that because it's way worse for melee. Okay, blocking a hit. And this is coming from somebody that actually likes the Trial of Sekima. I loved Sanctum in the first game, so I like it in the second game. It's not that bad. Also never got my 4th ascendancy on any of my characters in the first league. And I tried multiple times, but the last boss was kicking my ass. And I quit before I could ever really get back to it again. Blocking a hit by raising your shield or parrying now gives you a chance to avoid accumulating heavy stun buildup equal to the chance you would otherwise have had to evade the hit. Okay, fair enough. Unified stun mechanic and terminology between players and monsters. The stagger that players suffer when blocking too much damage from their shield is now a heavy stun. Players are still unable to be heavy stunned unless a mechanic specifically states otherwise. Cool. Players can no longer be light stunned while their shield is raised. Cool. Modifiers to curse effect have been changed to instead apply to the curse magnitude. This means that they're additive with any other modifiers to the effect of the debuff on the target. For example, curse magnitude and slow magnitude are now additive with each other for temporal chains. Okay, so that's mostly a nerf, I think, if I'm reading that right. Because I'm guessing they were multiplicative before. I'm not entirely sure. I wasn't using a lot of curses, but I'm guessing they were multiplicative before, and now they're only additive. So that is a nerf to temporal chains overall. Player-created objects such as ice crystals no longer have a monster power value. Okay, that doesn't really mean much. Ice crystals can no longer apply on kill effects such as Herald of Ash and Trample Toe Overkill. Heard. That just obliterated the entire meta. This one line obliterated the entire Herald and Trample Toe meta. Players now have 50% more light stun threshold per time stunned in the past 4 seconds. Okay, so doubled it. That's cool. Your heavy stun bar now doesn't start emptying until the heavy stun animation is finished, instead of when the heavy stun animation starts. Okay, so you're in the stun longer. That sucks. Heavy stun duration on players is now 3 seconds. Jesus. You are gonna die in that. Like, if you get heavy stunned, you're dead. Good thing they said that heavy stuns aren't frequent. Or I hope not, but Jesus. Players cannot block or evade enemy hits while they are heavy stunned. Critical weakness now stacks now track individually rather than refreshing the duration of all stacks when a stack is gained. Okay. Pin targets can no longer evade. Pinning a target now causes them to be light stunned. Okay. The base duration for Endurance, Frenzy, and Power Charge is now 15 seconds. They nerfed it, Why? Did that really need to happen? Fully broken armor now causes enemies to take 20% increased physical damage from hits. That's, I mean, isn't that technically a nerf to armor again, to like us too? Because if an enemy breaks our armor, doesn't that mean that we take 20% increased physical damage from hits? Just making armor even worse for everybody. I really don't like armor base for some reason. I don't know. Maybe there's something later that shows that they're maybe probably not. Let's be honest here. They're probably not touching armor. That's crazy that they nerfed it again though. Because there's so many mobs that break your armor in this game. It's insane that that's a thing. Revival minions now spawn with their skills on cooldown. This applies to newly summoned minions, not minions that have just been revived. Okay, an ancestrally boosted slam now has 30% more damage and 20% more area of effect. Okay, cool. Boosted it by 10% more damage. That's cool. Persistent minions now granted by ascendancy passives will now automatically be summoned when you allocate the passive for the first time. Good. That's a good change. Little quality of life. Players and monsters now only count as moving while moving, rather than the whole length of mini animations that would have some movement during part of them. Okay. Not really sure if that means anything for us. Setting a stat to be a specific value, such as Chaos Inoculation setting your life to 1 or Blood Magic setting your mana to 0, now occurs before conversion is applied to that stat, rather than being ignored by conversion. Okay. Does that mean anything? I'm not sure. I'm not smart enough to know, and it's way too late for me to remember. Okay. So they buffed Surprising Strength Ascendancy notable passive by 10%. Okay, they buffed Titan. That's cool. Warbringer. The Warbringer's Bellow Ascendancy passive now causes war cries to explode corpses, dealing 25% of their life as physical damage instead of providing corpses in your presence explode when you war cry, dealing 25%. This allows for Warcry area of effect to scale the corpse explosion radius. That's a decent quality of life buff for them. Turtle Charm Ascendancy passive now has 25% less block chance. Okay, another buff. Cool. The Encase in Jade skill now has been reworked and now consumes all stacks of Jade to grant guard based off of your maximum life for each Jade stack consumed. Is that enough nerf or a buff? I didn't play Warrior or Warbringer or anything like that. I don't know if that's a nerf or a buff. Ancestral Spirit skill granted by Answered Call Ascendancy passive now has minions from this skill of 1% increased accuracy rating per 3 of your dexterity. And minion from this skill have 1% increased damage for 3 strength. The minions granted from this skill have had the following changes. The Jadecaster pinning skill now has cooldown lowered. Okay. Jade Hulk, 3% stun build up. The bellow buff from Warhorn, 10% range on hit. Okay. Warcaller's minion build, heard. The Pua Shell aura, from the Ancestral Spirit Turtle now grants nearby allies 80% increased defenses. Jeez. That's insane right there. That's crazy. That's a crazy buff. 30% increased and then 15% more block chance? That's insane. Gentling Legionnaire, probably nerfed. The Enhanced Effectiveness Ascendancy now grants 20% less attributes. Fair enough. Integrated Efficiency and Ascendancy passive now swap positions with Gem Studied. No longer provides +3 skill slots. Instead, it now causes skills to gain 20% increased damage per socketed red support gem. Skills gain 6% increased skill speed per socketed green support gem. And skills gain 20% increased crit hit chance per blue socketed skill gem. Okay. The Implanted Gems Ascendancy passive no longer provides +1 to level of all skills. Instead now provides a choice between +2 to level of all skills with a strength requirement or +2. Okay, so Slightly, they did nerf it, kind of. They kind of buffed it, but they made it more specific. So it's not just a blanket +1. That's fine with me in my opinion. Um, it's in line with the stat stacking nerfs, which is fine. Stat stacking didn't ever need to be that crazy anyway. Making trees way less fun. Making less passive trees is what I'm talking about. Witch Hunter. The No Mercy Ascendancy passive now causes you to deal up to 40% more damage to enemies based on their missing concentration. So they buffed it by 10%. Okay. I don't know if that's going to really make it any better, to be honest. It's cool. It's cool that you do more damage, but eh. The Obsessive Rituals Ascendancy passive now provides 30% less armor and evasion rating. Was 50%. The Sorcerer Ward Barrier recharge delay has been reduced by 2 seconds at all skill gem levels. Okay. So basically, pretty good defensive buff. I mean, it makes it better to go the defensive route on it. Makes it more enticing. The Sorcery Ward will be recharging a hell of a lot faster. That's cool. I like that. I don't know if these changes make it to where the Witch Hunter is like he is now in the top tier. I don't think that's the case. I still think that he has fundamental issues because he is. This is the last ascendancy I used with my first artillery ballista build, and these are nice. Don't get me wrong, but these are definitely not enough to make him playable, in my opinion, and go the distance. I'm sure you could, and these will help, but like, in my opinion, they're kind of meh. Unless other stuff has been buffed around him to make him better than every other option just by default, but I don't think that's the case. He was pretty piss poor before, and I don't think 10% extra damage, a little bit more armor and evasion rating, and Sorcery Ward's Barrier being able to be up with some more time is going to be enough. Deadeye. The Thrilling Chase Ascendancy passive now provides when you consume frenzy charges, you count as having consumed twice as many. Previously had a 50% chance and described in slightly different way. Okay, so they just crazy buffed that, so it's just constant. If you take this, you're consuming you're consuming the same amount of frenzy charges, but it's acting as if you're consuming double them, which that's insane. And Deadeye was already basically just a better Witch Hunter. For all intents and purposes, I mean, like Witch Hunter was just a worse Deadeye. Pathfinder. I did run Pathfinder. It was a Rutu, I think, build for poison. So maybe I'm probably not going to really bother with one this league, I don't think, unless I just get bored of running Artillery Ballista, but we'll see. The Running Assault Ascendancy passive now grants 50% less movement speed penalty from skills while moving, previously 30%. Okay, so they nerfed it. The location of this passive has now been swapped with Relentless Pursuit. Connected Chemistry Ascendancy skill has been removed. Enduring Elixirs no longer has a prerequisite. Okay, that's cool. Added a new multi-choice Practical Remedies Ascendancy passive skill that provides the ability to allocate Grounding Stick, Dosing Vial, Thawing Campfire, which provides immunity to shock, immunity to ignite, and immunity to freeze, respectively. Okay, added a new Sustainable Practices of Ascendancy passive, which now provides 30% of evasion rating, also grants elemental damage reduction. What? That's insanity. What? I mean, I know there's a lot in this game I know there's a lot that is physical damage, but like the fact that she just gets a blanket 30% elemental damage reduction, or sorry, 30% of evasion rating is elemental damage reduction. Jesus, that's insane. Just a buff to evasion on her. Holy crap. Acolyte of Chayula. I know this was kind of poo-poo before, so maybe they made it better. Embrace the Darkness Ascendancy skill now provides +8 to maximum darkness levels per level, was previously +5. Okay. The Ravenous Doubts Ascendancy passive no longer provides Mana Leech as instant. Instead, now provides Mana Leech recovers based on other damage types as well as physical damage. Holy crap, they know. They didn't. This node was useless because Mana Leech was only physical, which I don't know why this was a thing. Why not just change it to where Leech isn't just physical for everything? But whatever. Um, that's cool. I guess if they want to do that instead of just making it to where Leech is not just physical, that's fine. There may be some other reason why they're not just making it to where all Leech is not physical base Leech. But this is a start. This is good. If they're the only ones that get it, that's fine. But hey, whatever. Just means that they're actually good. Like, you don't have to worry about your mana if you take that. That's cool. Honor loss during the trial of Sekima is now taken before the Acolyte of Chalula's Darkness. Okay. Invoker. The and Protect Me from Harm ascendancy passive now provides 50% less evasion rating, was 40%. Okay. Lead Me Through Grace ascendancy passive now provides 1 spirit for every 8 energy shield on an equipped body, was previously 6, and 1 spirit for every 20, was 15. Of course they nerfed that. Elemental Expression skill granted by the and Shatter Them to the Winds ascendancy now deals 40% more damage at all gem levels. Lol. That's an insane buff. Holy crap. So this thing was garbage before. Ooh, Blood Mage. This is important for a lot of people. The Blood Barb's ascendancy passive tool no longer provides 10% of damage gained as extra physical damage. It now causes bleeding you inflict on cursed targets is to be aggravated. Okay. Added a new Between the Cracks ascendancy skill that causes critical hits to ignore monster armor. Requires Sanguimancy. Okay. This is it? This is it? For the Blood Mage? They didn't change anything about Sanguimancy itself? They didn't change it being mandatory and it making your character weaker? I am the confused. Am I missing something? Why is the Infernalist list insane? Like, I get the Infernalist was also broken, but why is the Blood Mage two lines? They changed one of the passives and added a new one where Sanguimancy is still required, instead of making it to where Sanguimancy isn't even needed to be taken. So, like, unless I'm missing something, nothing has changed for the Blood Mage. It's still a crap ascendancy because you still have to take Sanguimancy, which kills you. Because all the mana costs are insane. Which, as far as I know, nothing has changed for spell mana costs. So I'm just flabbergasted that this is not way bigger. This is one of the biggest things I was expecting them to change, and yet they didn't barely touch it. That that just confuses me. Okay, well, at least Infernalist got some love. Let's see, or maybe not. I don't know. Demon Form skill granted by the Demonic Possession Ascendancy passive skill now has a cooldown of 15 seconds, previously 20. Okay, and a maximum Demon Flame of 10 was previously uncapped. You now lose a flat amount of life per second per Demon Flame, scaling with skill level rather than a percentage of your max health. The dodge roll while in Demon Form has an increased distance. Has its distance reduced. Okay, Seething Body, a passive skill. So they kind of made it. I guess they made it to where you it's just not possible to sustain it forever, like people were doing before. Or they made it much harder, with requiring much more skill, much more investment in it to make it to where you can get permanent uptime on it, or at least close to a permanent uptime. The Seething Body Ascendancy, which that's kind of crazy because the only way I was hearing that people were even making Ascendancy work is through this and doing some shenanigans with making it permanent. And there would mean, like, you would have a while where you do no damage because you'd need to ramp up. But once you were ramping, you were fine. You did a craplet of damage. But unless there are some other changes, this would basically kill the Ascendancy, right? The Seething Body Ascendancy passive skill now has while on the what? The Seething Body Ascendancy passive skill now has while on High Eternal Flame. Oh, while on High Eternal Flame, you and your allies in your presence gain 50% of damage as fire damage. Heard. So they buffed it by 20%. Grinning Immolation Ascendancy passive now provides 50% more critical damage bonus, was 30%. The Pyromaniac Pact Ascendancy skill now provides 50% of the Infernal Flame to be lost per second if none was gained in the past 2 seconds. Okay. The Bringer of Flame Ascendancy skill now causes all damage from you and your allies in your presence to contribute to ignite chance and magnitude instead of providing while not on low internal flames. All damage from you and your allies in your presence contributes to ignite chance and magnitude. No longer required. Pyromantic Pact. The Loyal Hellhound Ascendancy no longer causes 20% of damage from hits to be taken from your Hellhound's life before you. Did they just remove this thing's usefulness? That's what that sounds like they just did. The Master Darkness Ascendancy skill now provides Demon Flame has no maximum. Oh. Okay, so you can get it, you just need another Ascendancy point to get that. Heard. The Small Mana Ascendancy passives now have 3% increased maximum mana, was 4%, so they slightly nerfed mana. And after allocating the Pyromantic Pact passive skill, you now have at least one maximum, even with 100% reduced maximum mana. Okay. Using Blink while in demon form now plays an appropriate animation instead of landing to blink. Okay. Chronomancer, I didn't really care for Chronomancer, so Circular Heartbeat has been removed. Rapid River no longer is a prerequisite. I don't really know what that is. Quicksand Hourglass Ascendancy now provides every 10 seconds you gain 50% more cast speed for 5 seconds. Oh, so it just gives it a buff, pretty massive buff. Added a new Flood of Echoes Ascendancy passive skill that grants Unleash skill. Okay. Stormweaver, the Force of Will Ascendancy passive now provides 1% increased. It was previously 15, so they just nerfed it around over the board. That makes a lot of sense. So that's it. That's it. I don't know how I feel about that, to be totally honest with you. Like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, because this is egregious in my opinion. Unless I'm missing something, this is egregious, isn't it? This is this being literally nothing but this. They didn't do anything with Sangromancy, which was the main issue everybody was having with it. The fact that you're forced into a node that no matter what you do makes you weaker. And I know people have made builds that made it to where it was okay, but like the fact that it's a thing that Sangromancy makes you weaker at the beginning is just ridiculous. Anyway, okay. There are many new clusters, mostly in the Huntress Ranger area of the tree, and many existing passive skills have been updated. These changes may result in your existing passive tree being forcefully refunded if you had allocated nodes around the areas where the layouts changed. Added a new blind-related clusters, volatility, ranged and melee clusters, hazards-related, companions, banner, bleeding thorns, quivers. Bleeding inflict, companion stuff. Okay. Doubles the mana cost for Eldritch Battery. That's gonna be fucking crazy. The Giant's Blood Keystone passive now has triple attribute requirements of martial weapons. This previously only affected axes, maces, and swords, but it was described as weapons. Okay. Heard. So they just clarified that a little bit. Cool. They nerfed the shit out of quiver stat stacking stuff. Makes sense. Which did affect my other build, but not the one we wanted. Okay, here's where I'm. These are okay. I'm not gonna. If you feel like you want to read them, you can read them. But I'm not. I'm getting kind of tired at this point, so we're gonna skip over it. And we're not even halfway down the page, so we've still got a bit to go. Many skills have had their base damage and or damage growth level rebalanced. Most of these changes are not specifically mentioned below, as the changes are too widespread. The mana cost for all attacks, marks, and war cries have been reduced, most notably at their higher gem levels. Good. Adjusted minion damage and life scaling. General damage and life is the same early game, but lower than before at the higher levels, especially at gem level plus 20. Okay, because minions were cracked at the end game for sure. Most of them were anyway. Adjusted the target life threshold for skeletal arsonist's damage, demise, skill according to the life scaling changes. Okay. Arc no longer deals more damage for each remaining chain. Archmage. Artillery Ballista. Artillery Ballista's base damage physical skill scaling now matches that of other totems like Shockwave Totem and Ripwire Ballista. The Artillery Explosion now converts 100% of physical damage to 10% conversion, so now you don't have to worry about converting anymore. That's freaking awesome. Quality now provides 0 to minus 0.4 seconds to totem's base attack speed. That's actually a pretty good buff, actually. I think that, I don't know if that's going to be enough to make it viable, but the thing was, it did okay damage, but now I know that like, it's better, because the explosions have 100% physical ignite. I was using it for ignite, and that's what I really wanted to do, and it didn't work that well, so hopefully now that you can scale all, like, your physical damage to the moon, and it's fine, because if you're scaling the explosion, it'll just all do fire damage. Is amazing. Banner skills now have an aura radius of, okay, so slight buff. Okay. Pwn Storm, cast on minion, cast on shot. Cluster grenades, mini grenades, explosions. They buff the, okay, they buff cluster grenade a little bit. Ooh, they nerfed the ever-loving crap out of the concoction skills. That sucks. Oof, nerfed the ever-loving crap out of corpse wade. Makes sense. Nerf detonate dead already. Fair enough. Oh, explosive concoction. Okay, has a lot more magnitude. Just baseline. Explosive grenade cooldown is now 7 seconds. Oh, gutted. Fair enough. Now has explosive radius of. So they buffed the minimum slightly, but made the later levels fine or the same. But they did buff slightly the time of detonation. Okay, but you're not using nearly as many of them, which makes a lot of sense. Okay, so they made flash grenade slightly better. Cool. Fragmentation rounds, base explosion radius now. Okay, so the AoE is slightly better for fragmentation rounds. Gas arrow, gas grenades, and decompose now have a limit of 6 poison clouds. Okay. So yeah, they did definitely nerf grenades, which is good, honestly. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. That's promising for things like that we use. Kind of skipping through stuff at this point. I'm getting tired and I want to just read what might be relevant to us. Jeez. Ripwire Ballista might be something we have to. The thing is, Ripwire Ballistas take the spaces of our other ballistas, so it's hard to implement them. But we may run it just as a way of adding more pin. But then again, if we take the pin nodes on Tactician, then we won't really need Ripwire Ballista. Another grenade skill that looks to be, yeah, nerfed. Makes sense. The poison cloud, gas arrow, gas grenade, and decompose now gain 20% more radius per second, up to a maximum of 80%. Ugh, so they massively nerfed the AoE and number of the clouds that you can have. Okay. Okay. So the one node we wanted got buffed. That's good. Good sign. Is it a massive buff? I don't know. It's hard to tell. Were other totems crazy? I don't really remember many people using totems and being like they were going crazy. But the fact that they weren't even doing the damage of the other totems that were in the game was a telltale sign that Artillery Ballista just wasn't doing the damage it should have been. So maybe now that they are in line with the rest of the totems, it might be viable to use them, because honestly before it wasn't even viable. Like the damage just wasn't there. So hopefully that means that it's a bit better of a way of scaling things. Now I want to see. I was trying to do an ignite build before. That's like I kind of wanted to use the explosions as a way of like igniting and ignite prolif. I would love to see changes to ignite prolif. Okay, so they nerfed the damage for scatter shot. $20 to 30% increased bonuses from equip and 30%. It now has +1 to 2 charm slots. Okay, that's at least good. Oh, it got a massive change, man. I don't even know if that's going to be worth it anymore. I mean, it might still be worth it, but I don't know if it's going to be overwhelmingly like better than every other option anymore. Nerf to the Queen of the Forest. Jeweler's Orb now set a skill gem to have a specified number of support sky. Yeah, they said that. Okay. Distinctive names, cool. Runes now have 3 tiers, cool, knew that. Doubled the rate of runes, fucking awesome. The base damage of all crossbows have been increased. Crossbows now have 2-handed variations of damage modifiers instead of one hand. Oh my god. This right here, this one node, is more massive than anything I've read so far for our builds. This right here is going to be the main source of how much damage we're doing. The fact that I didn't even know, I didn't research enough to know, but still, like, the fact that I didn't know that crossbows used one-handed versions of the mods is crazy. Holy crap. They nerfed the golden charm, makes sense. Nerfed breach rings, makes sense. The relic modifier that causes the merchant to have an additional options now grants single additional option, previously 2 to 3. Okay. Oh, armor on monsters have been reduced. Cool. These are cool and all, but I can learn them as we go. It doesn't really bother me to not know them. The ritual menu fucking pauses the game. Nice. 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 This wasn't displayed before. That's nice. Just kind of glancing through the rest of these bug fixes to see if there's anything that I care about. Fixed a bug where long fuse support did not prevent grenades from being detonated. Fixed a bug where crossbow shot could consume more than one bolt when firing more than one projectile. Fixed a bug where the damage bonus provided by fresh clip support was shared between skills and weapon sets. Unsocketing the support also correctly removes the bonus. Fixed a bug where Fiery Death's explosion was not considered a triggered skill and therefore could be supported by some supports that don't apply to triggered skills. Okay. Fixed a bug with the fire exposure on fully... Oh, no. Okay, don't really care about that. Bruh. What? Fixed a bug where crossroad reload speed was not being affected by local attack speed modifiers in the crossbow itself. Lol. I don't know how often that happened, but I played crossbows and it felt fine. That's a buff right there. The ballistas could target inanimate objects. So now they're actually going to be targeting monsters and hitting them instead of, targeting whatever the fuck is around you. Jesus. Fix an issue where swapping to an ammo type while using a controller. Okay, I don't care. I don't use a controller. Fixed a bug where Ballista and Ancestral Warrior Totem did not display their weapons-based critical hit chance. This is monster stuff. Oh. They buffed Ingenuity again. They gutted it so crazily that I guess enough people complained that they buffed it again. So it was 20 to 30, so now it's 30 to 50. So it's not egregiously worse. Before it was going to be useless. Not useless, but it wasn't going to be nearly as good. Oh, never mind. Sad. Oh, no. Okay, so the ones we read are the new changes. I see. So they nerfed even more. I see. That sucks. So, yeah, okay. So what we read is. Alright, well, my overall thoughts are that the build we play, Artillery Ballista, seems I mean, mostly either untouched or buffed, which I expected, to be totally honest. And that's not counting all the uniques and stuff changed. I don't really think that a lot of the passive notable changes on the tree are going to affect us much. I didn't really dabble into much of the ranger tree in my experience, because you're a totem build, so you go towards the warrior side of the tree more. So that's fine. I mean, maybe now I'll want to go over there and see if there's some stuff I will want. Towards the later half, like 85 through 90, you may want to go towards the bottom half of, or you have back in the first patch, you may have wanted to go towards the bottom, like the outer ring of the ranger tree, so that you could go and get the +1 to charm slots permanently, but that was more of a later game thing, because charms back then didn't do much. This version, you may want to go for charms more, because they've made it to where ailments now affect you more. If you're a tactician, though, we may take that node that makes it to where our evasion rating means, we won't need to even worry about ailments. So you never know. You never know. That'll be part of the build that we'll have to solve on the fly, in my opinion. It's looking pretty promising for tactician, in my opinion. If the changes to the artillery ballista damage are hopefully as significant as I hope. And I think the gem itself being buffed is cool, and I think that will play a part, but I think the bigger buff will be the two-handed modifiers on crossbows. Just making it where the crossbows actually give you more damage overall and stuff like that. I think that's going to be the most significant change to the crossbow builds in general. Just the fact that they weren't doing enough damage, and the fact that it got through in the first patch that they didn't have the right modifiers on them, is hilarious to me. Other major thing is that I expected more changes for the Blood Mage, and I didn't play a Blood Mage in the first patch, but the fact that they didn't change more than just a couple things, and they didn't even touch Sanguimancy, kind of blows me away. I don't really know what they're thinking about that. Maybe they didn't touch it much because they plan on a full rework for it later. Not really sure what they're thinking with that, but for now, that's what I got out of this. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the comments of the video that I make. I'm just going to post basically me going through this on YouTube. Anyway, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Peace.